Hi guys, so before we get into it, a quick disclaimer that you'll find all my other reviews of Stephen King adaptations in my Stephen King playlist, and there will be some spoilers today, although I will stop short of revealing the outcomes to these segments if I can help it. And the reason I use the word segments is because this is a horror anthology film. It was initially meant to adapt 3 particular short stories from King's Night Shift collection: Quitters Inc., The Ledge, and Sometimes They Come Back, although at some point during pre-production they scrapped plans to include Sometimes They Come Back and replaced that with an original story called General, which I believe was not written by Stephen King. So this film ended up being 2/3 of a Stephen King adaptation. I do think it's a shame that they didn't include Sometimes They Come Back, because I think that story would make a really good 30-minute horror short instead of the full-length feature that they eventually turned it into. In fact, that went on to be like a full movie trilogy, which is just ridiculous. I covered all 3 of those films fairly recently, and they're all dire. In the general scheme of things, I'm much more of a fan of the idea of King's short stories being kept as short films to be used in anthology movies, although to my knowledge Cat's Eye is the only Stephen King horror anthology film, which is a shame because there's still like another 5 or 6 short story collections to come after Night Shift, but that's a problem for another day. Today we're talking about Cat's Eye, which I first saw back in the 90s on TV. This was my second watch this week. It's taken me 30 years to watch this film again. It was directed by Lewis Teague, who is not necessarily a household name, but he has done some recognisable stuff. He directed Alligator in 1980, which is a brilliant film. He also did Cujo, which I've not seen, but I have read the novel. And Lewis Teague also did Jewel in the Nile in the mid-80s, the much underrated sequel, I would suggest, to Romancing the Stone. I liked both of those films back in the day. But Teague was a guy with a good bit of pedigree. But in terms of how I'm going to cover this review, I'm just going to talk about each of the 3 segments in the order in which you see them in the movie. So I guess we will start with Quitters Inc. This is an absolutely wonderful start to the movie and features an amazing performance by James Woods. How they managed to get an actor of this calibre to appear in a short film within a horror anthology, I have no idea, but he is superb in every single scene of this. So this is about a guy whose name I can't remember, so let's just call him James Woods. He wants to quit smoking, so he goes to this company who he thinks might be able to help him. They're called Quitters Inc. But he's probably thinking that they're going to throw him a few Nicorette patches, maybe do a bit of hypnotism, but in reality, they've got a very different way of getting people to quit smoking. So what they basically tell James Woods is, look, we're going to have some people follow you everywhere pretty much, and if they catch you smoking even 1 cigarette, then we are going to kidnap your wife, bring her in here, throw her into that room over there and have her tortured by electrocution. And then if we catch you smoking a 2nd cigarette a little bit further down the line, we're going to bring your kid in here, throw her in the electrocution room and torture her as well. And so on. The punishments just keep going up with every subsequent cigarette to I think a point where if he smokes a 5th cigarette, then they'll just shoot him in the head and call him a hopeless case who cannot be cured of nicotine addiction. Now, if you've never smoked before, you might be thinking, well, this isn't a difficult situation, is it? Just don't smoke. But let me tell you, I used to be a smoker once upon a time, so I can absolutely buy into this situation as being genuinely difficult for James Woods, because he's going around, he's looking to see if he's being followed, and if he can't see anybody, then he's sort of thinking, well, maybe I could get away with a cigarette. You know, the temptation is there because the urge to smoke is so strong. I started smoking when I was 16, and I smoked about 10 a day for a long, long time, sometimes 20 a day if I was going on a night out, because I always seemed to smoke more if I was drinking alcohol. But I was addicted to cigarettes for a long, long time. I didn't quit until I was 30, and the reason I did was because my wife fell pregnant with our first, and I kind of had this crossroads moment where I thought to myself, okay, if I don't quit now, when my wife's just fallen pregnant, then when the hell am I ever going to do it? And luckily, I did manage to jack the habit in. a long time has passed since then. I'm now 44, but I still have the memories of what it's like to be addicted to nicotine, and it's not nice. And it's not like I just used to smoke all the time, willy-nilly, whenever the hell I wanted. I'm looking back on the poorer part of my life, years that I spent as a student, for example. And there were times when I had to go 7, 8, 9 days without a cigarette because I was so poor. And it was like living in hell. It's like living in prison. It just fidgeting and like just hating the world because I couldn't get access to a cigarette. I can remember times when I would plot what meals I could miss just so I could afford one packet of cigarettes. That's what smoking addiction can do to you. So I can absolutely remember the addiction and what it's like. So this story definitely resonates with me for that reason. I can just absolutely buy this character and the struggle that he's going through. But even if you've never smoked before, I'm sure you can still get into the story and the difficulties that this guy is going through. This story is just brilliant from start to end. I enjoyed the written version, and I think I enjoyed the screen version even more. I'll highlight one particular scene that I loved. So Woods goes to a party. He's already been to see Quitters Inc. by this point, so he's not supposed to smoke. But when he goes to this party, like everybody's smoking around him, and this is just an example of what it used to be like to go out back in the day, because there must be like 7, 10 people in this small room all puffing away to the music as they're dancing, and this is just how it used to be. It'd feel horrendous now, but back then it was just totally normal. But because Woods is not supposed to smoke, he's got all this smoke around him. He's like, oh my God, this is like torture. And then he starts hallucinating. He sees this one guy suddenly have 10 cigarettes in his mouth, like, ah. And then he turns another way and he sees an hallucination of somebody like in some kind of comic cigarette suit, some giant cigarette outfit or something. It's brilliant. And I even love the choice of music in this scene, which is Every Breath I Take, I think it's called, which is a brilliant choice because you can easily connect that to smoking, given that smoking affects your breathing. And maybe it's because I've always listened to the P. Diddy version of this song rather than the original, but I always liken this song, or how this song makes me feel is it just makes me think of people dying or losing loved ones, I should say. And, the concept of smoking and lung disease and heart disease and what have you, it does make you think of people dying young, passing early. So I think it's a brilliant choice to have this song playing during this party, even though it's not a song you'd normally hear at a party. I mean, it's basically just one rung above playing Everybody Hurts by R.E.M., right? But what a brilliant horror short this is. Definitely one of the best of this type that I've seen in any horror anthology. I absolutely loved it, and James Woods completely elevated it. It's brilliant. This is another absolutely brilliant one, and I loved the original written version as well. There are 20 stories in Night Shift, and I would say The Ledge would make it into my top 5 if I ranked them. And that is not an easy school in which to get into the top 5, believe me. So this is about an amateur tennis player who falls in love with a woman who just happens to be married to a local gangster. Now, this gangster, he lives in the penthouse suite at the top of a really tall building. It must be like 30 floors in the air. It's huge. It'd be somewhere like New York or somewhere, but it's never said in the short where this is. But one day the gangster has his goons catch up to the tennis player, knock him out and bring him up to the penthouse suite, and this gangster basically gives the guy 2 choices. Number 1, he can just walk out, but if he does that, he will probably go to prison for a long time because the gangster has planted a few bags of heroin in the guy's car. Choice number 2 is just as unappealing, really. So the gangster tells him that he can go out onto the balcony, like 30 floors above street level, and walk around the outside of the building on the small ledge that's there. And if he makes it all the way round without falling off and dying, then he's free to just sail off into the sunset with the guy's wife and even $20,000 in cash on top of that. But this is not an easy thing to accomplish, going around the outside of this building. Like, the ledge is so thin. It's about that wide. It's about the length of a shoe. So if you can picture yourself stood on this thing 30 floors up, just leaning against the outside of the building, trying to shuffle your way along, it's not easy. One mistake and you could fall off. A big gust of wind could potentially knock you off. And remember, it's going to be a lot windier that high up than it is down at street level. Now, in the original written version, it's just nerve-jangling reading this, because Stephen King goes into every last excruciating detail of what it would be like to try and attempt this feat. That there are pigeons who attack the guy at certain points because they're just not used to a man being this high up where they would normally hang out. At one point, the gangster leans out of a window and honks a horn to try and startle the guy into falling off. So there's all these things that hinder him, and it's so nervy just reading about it. It's like, oh my God, this is like horrible just to read about. And the screen version is even worse somehow because you can see it. And this affected me a lot because I suffer from vertigo. So a story like this was always going to get to me. That's the thing about Cat's Eye. It's like every story just seems to poke at my buttons. You know, we've got the smoking thing in the first story because I'm an ex-smoker. Second story, it's, you know, it's really going to get to people who suffer from a fear of heights like I do. So this is really effective horror. It's such a simple concept as well, you know, that the sort of story where you just think, why didn't I think of that? Now, I'm not going to spoil the ending to this. I'm not going to tell you if this guy makes it all the way around the outside of the building or not. You'll have to find out for yourself. But this is an absolutely terrific tale. It's brilliant in both versions as well. It's absolutely masterful. The third story, General, is definitely the weak link. It also happens to be the only story here not penned by Stephen King. I guess we'll put that down to a coincidence. One thing I forgot to mention earlier is that there is a kind of linking narrative binding these three stories together. So before we watch any of the stories, we see a cat wandering around a city centre, and this cat ends up in the background of all three stories. So while you're watching Quitters Inc., you'll often see the cat in various scenes just hanging around on the periphery, but it's not really involved in the main story. And the same goes with the ledge. You know, you can see the cat in various scenes and it might nibble somebody's leg from time to time just to remind you that it's there. But it's only really in the third story that the cat becomes a really important character. The third tale is when the cat has its big moment to shine, if you like. But sadly, whoever was writing this decided it would be a good idea to have a story where a moggy cat gets into a big battle with a small evil pixie. Or maybe it's a gremlin. I don't know. It's 3 foot high, this thing. It's green and it likes to cackle and go with a big giant butcher's knife in its hand. And I'm like, ugh. There's a reason why I've never watched any of the Leprechaun movies, and that is that I just don't really like the idea of this kind of horror. I will make an exception for Gremlins 1 and 2, but I did not like the creature that just randomly pops up in this story. So to give you a brief idea of what this tale is, we've got this normal household where there's a little girl living there, but in the middle of the night, this weird gremlin creature just barges its way out of the skirting boards and wants to kill the little girl for some reason. And the only thing protecting her is the cat, which has recently been befriended by the little girl. So it ends up becoming a battle between cat and gremlin, and we see them fighting to bad special effects. And it's like, oh my God, why is this potentially ruining this entire movie? It's been so good up until now with those first 2 stories. And now we have cat versus gremlin for a third story. And there are all these awful things that you'll notice about this girl's bedroom as well. Like, so there's a fireplace with a chimney in it in the girl's bedroom for some reason. I've never ever seen a fireplace in a bedroom before. Is this a USA thing? Because in America, we only really have fireplaces in the sitting rooms. The fact that there's a fireplace in the girl's bedroom seems to be very convenient, as if they really needed a way that the cat could get back into the bedroom because the window's closed, if you see what I mean. And also there's this really dangerous extractor fan. It's like this thing that's spinning around so fast that if your finger accidentally got in it, it would be lopped off. I think there's like a railing in front of the fan, but even so, it's a dangerous thing to have in a girl's bedroom. And I'm going to spoil the ending to this now, but I really don't think you'll care. So, spoiler alert, 1, 2, 3. The gremlin thing ends up getting thrown into the extractor fan and it gets diced up and killed. So if you've ever seen Alien 3, like one of the first kills in that film, Prisoner Murphy backing into the fan, and one of the other prisoners remarks, I was always telling him, stay away from the fans. This fan in this girl's bedroom is like a miniature version of that. It's an absolute death hazard. Like if this girl's just wandering past it, if her dressing gown belt just accidentally dangles down to this thing, God knows what would happen. So it's crazy to me that she would have this in her room. And the other thing I noticed as well, there's like a record player, and the cat and the pixie or gremlin or whatever, they're fighting and they end up on top of the record player and it starts playing this song. And the song, the record that she's got on this player is the same song we heard in Quitters Inc. Every Breath I Take. And it's the weirdest song that a little girl would have on. I'm thinking to myself, would she not be listening to Baby Shark or Mr. Blobby or whatever kids were listening to in 1985? The idea that this 9-year-old girl is going to be a big fan of The Police just didn't quite work for me. So there's lots of little things that will potentially nag you in this story, and I didn't enjoy it, although towards the very end of it, I did forgive it for its sins a little bit, because you get to a point with this where you realise that the girl and the cat have really bonded to the point where these two are going to be friends for life. And it is nice to see. It is nice to see a child fall in love with a pet. And it's nice to see this cat finally find a home, because it's been homeless all the way throughout Cat's Eye. You know, it's been wandering around all over the place, and finally it's found this little girl. And the sight of them two bonding at the end of this story did make me think, oh, you know, it did sort of melt my heart a little bit, and it did make me forgive the sins of this story. But yeah, it's a weird way to have ended this whole thing. This final story is just bonkers. My advice to you, if you've really enjoyed the first two stories, just try and see the funny side of this third story and don't let it ruin the entire experience for you. So I guess we've reached the point where I go to the bag of terror and we'll find out how I'm going to score this film overall. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 Michael Myers carving knives out of 5. I might have gone even higher, but for that third story being extremely subpar. But I still really enjoyed Cat's Eye. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would, but just from the fact that I watched this 30 years ago and kind of enjoyed it when it was on TV, I knew that this was going to be some kind of rebound from all those dreadful Sometimes They Come Back movies that I've been reviewing recently. So watching this has definitely re-energized me as I keep pushing my way forwards in this Stephen King review series. I know we're going to have insane downs, we're going to have ups, and this was definitely an up for me. If you've never seen Cat's Eye before, absolutely get on and check it out. It's worth it just for the first 2 stories alone. And while you're watching those, you might as well also check out the third story just for shits and giggles. So there you are. That was my review of Cat's Eye. I will catch you all again next time. Bye-bye.